Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. With Pakistan as your neighbor, India never has a dull moment. To understand a little bit about the underlying currents that are flowing with this trip of Imran Khan to United States. By the way, he traveled on Qatar Airlines, which is very interesting. You have your own country's carrier, but he wants to travel in Qatar Airlines flight. He just gets down like a common person. I think he was accompanied by Bajwa. So the Pakistani army doesn't want him to go out too far, don't want him to wander out too far without their guy being there. But be as it may, you might have seen it on social media. Tariq Fatah, in fact, tweeted the video of this guy, sitting in the bus and chatting and so on. And just like you and me, boy, that's great. That feels great. Anyway, I'm all excited because I just finished my second cup of coffee. I'm forgetting to invite our guest of the evening, Abhijit Iyer-Mitra. Welcome to PGurus channel.
Thank you.
All right. So Abhijit, when are you fighting the elections next? I see you, trending towards that, and I think you would make an excellent politician. We need cranial matter in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. I mean, I can never have enough of that there. But so first question to you, Abhijit. The jokes apart, Imran Khan is visiting the United States. And apparently, this is not an official invitation. Looks like he's doing it in his personal capacity. He's going to do the usual circuit, meet with the Pak diaspora, rant and rave about India and so on and so forth. But there's somehow, Donald Trump agreed to meet with him, maybe half an hour. These guys will make it like a 2-hour meeting, whereas it might be just a saying hi and bye in an elevator. But I'm getting the extreme. But what is your read on what Imran is going to do in the United States this time around?
So several things. One of the things is that, Pakistan prime ministers for some reason always seem to need the validation of a US president. You remember when Nawaz Sharif wanted to withdraw from Kargil, yes, he wanted it to be seen that he was going to the US and getting this whole validation for the withdrawal from Clinton or whatever. That's number one. Number two, we need to remember is that the Pakistani diaspora is very, very powerful. One of the reasons that they feel that they can use the nation of Pakistan, the landmass of Pakistan, almost like a disposable condom, is the fact that almost every Pakistani worth his salt either has a second US passport or a UK passport or a UAE permanent residence or something like that, or a house in Saudi Arabia, something like that, where they can run off to in times of difficulty. So, they're never left to pick up the burden of all of this. So some of it is also going to be to go there to, rally the foreign troops, so to say. Third part is that, we shouldn't underestimate the negotiating card he brings to the table with Trump. Trump may have a lot of contempt for him, but remember the key to the withdrawal or the stabilization, Afghanistan can't be stabilized, but any kind of withdrawal or stabilization or even talk of stabilization, even temporary stabilization for a face-saving exit for America, has to go through Pakistan, especially because the other routes are so completely alienated. The air route from Russia is never going to allow it. Russia is not going to allow its satellite states in Central Asia to allow it to be bypassed, given the hostilities with America right now. Iran, Trump has basically gone
ballistic
with Iran. So now Pakistan is the only route left.
But and in a sense, sorry to cut you off. What about India?
We don't have any land access to Afghanistan.
That's fine. So but we have sea access, right?
No, we have absolutely even Chabahar. The problem there is, if you remember in the last or the previous to the last episode, we discussed this. The Iranians were always playing this game, and now the Iranians are suffering for it, that they basically never allowed us to complete Chabahar. And there were many things. On one side, there was the Taliban control of the road on the Afghan side, but even on the from Kandahar southwards, and even on the Iranian side, the Iranians just let us keep adding minor additions to Chabahar as and when their relationships with America deteriorates. So we keep dangling it to us, but in real terms, we've got no real access to Afghanistan whatsoever. So, the funny thing in all of this is that greater tensions with Russia and this America going ballistic with Iran means that Pakistan's salience in this whole American withdrawal game has only increased. So he does bring a fairly strong negotiating card. The problem is that Pakistan is also on a very weak wicket in terms of its finances. And second, not second, I mean, this is what the fourth or fifth point is, that as we've discussed before, CPEC is basically a neo-colonization project. There is no way this infrastructure can actually pay the returns on investment.
Absolutely.
And so you're going to see Pakistan default on it. And it's going to, and the Chinese aren't going to be like the Americans. The Americans are, very forgiving to a fault almost. They're willing to take slap after slap on the face and pretend things didn't happen. And in this case, that's exactly what's going to happen. That the Pakistanis are basically, all the Pakistanis that I talk to in private, even though they're viciously critical of America in public, they're like, look, we've got to play a certain game. We need the Americans. The Americans have been very kind to us, but we are now getting very, very scared with the Chinese, because the Chinese are getting very, very aggressive with us on CPEC not going forward as fast as it should. And they don't want to fall into that Chinese debt trap. They're really stuck between a rock and a hard place. And from everything I'm hearing within Pakistan is that the army also realizes that it's caught in a very, very difficult spot. The problem is they don't know how to get out of it. There is not one single course of action that any of us can come up with that sees Pakistan getting out of any of this without a huge amount of either financial destabilization or combined with massive social destabilization.
Abhijit, I have two questions for you, and I'll ask you both questions and you can answer them in sequence. Number one, what in your opinion is the number of groups that are lobbying Pakistan's cause in the capital, and the same for India? Number two is, why do you think Nirmala Sitharaman as defense minister turned down McMaster's proposal asking for help of India in Afghanistan?
So, see, the support for Pakistan in DC, you have to split it into two groups. One is active paid support, which is lobbyists, of which Pakistan has had many. And the second is people that Pakistan gives access to that lobby for Pakistan simply to preserve such access, right? So, for example, if you take Anatole Lieven's book, this book was recommended by everyone from Barack Obama to the British Prime Minister, everyone saying, this explains how complicated Pakistan is. But if you look at it technically, it does nothing. It's just an apologia for Pakistan saying, look, it's a complex country, as it was called, a difficult country. And there's nothing realistically that we can do. Now, the problem with that is that Anatole Lieven had a huge conflict of interest in this, because he went on paid first-class trips to Pakistan, paid for entirely by the Pakistanis, in first class, not even business class. And he was taken hubara or bustard, it's a species of birds, hunting in Balochistan and things like that. And they do this very often, even if you're a low-level American, say a young researcher, a PhD researcher, or even a master's researcher going for primary research to Pakistan. What they do is they almost give you access to the army chief or something like that, and you get wowed. You don't want to break those links, so you're caught into a trap like that. I can tell you a lot of people that have been the recipients of this kind of, kind of subsidies. Munificence. Yeah, that's better. It's not a subsidy. It's munificence of the Pakistan army and the Pakistani state. This is one side. The second is you've actually got lobbyists, and Pakistan plays the lobbyist game very, very well out there. The third problem in this is the way the Indian bureaucracy treats Americans, right? It's always one step away, pushing people away, doesn't understand the linkages game, doesn't understand the networking game. And so there's, the wellspring of goodwill for India there evaporates very rapidly. So these are the three things we have to look at in terms of Pakistan lobbying in DC. And, these interact in a very unpredictable way. As per Nirmala Sitharaman saying no to McMaster, it has a lot to do with the fact, to the question we discussed before, which is realistically, we've got no real supply chains. It's a tyranny of geography. You don't have a land supply chain. You don't have an air supply chain. You don't have a road supply chain. Now, there was the hope that, a CPEC, China would build CPEC. CPEC would go into Afghanistan, and because the road had Chinese sovereignty on it, you could kind of bypass Pakistani sovereignty and take things on an elevated highway to Afghanistan. It seems even that isn't going to happen because of the way India stayed out of the Belt and Road Initiative. So basically, India has nothing to offer. What can we realistically do? Very, very little. Whatever we can smuggle in or transport on a very slow, very, very dangerous road to Afghanistan, that's all we can do. So, realistically, there was nothing India could have even done.
Abhijit, I have a small disagreement with you. Maybe I'm naive, and I'm always good at asking questions without quite knowing the implications. With the American help, India could have established the air supply chain because America can fly out of Qatar at will, and they could also use India's as a staging base and fly out American aircraft to go to Afghanistan. Surely the Pakistanis are not going to take aim at an American supply plane going from India to Afghanistan, right?
Yeah, but the issue is if you have American planes going from India, then it becomes a huge problem for the Pakistanis because they see this as a joint Pakistani-American, an Indian-American conspiracy, A. B, air transport is frightfully expensive. C, it's volumetrically limited, right? You can only take extremely high-value goods. Even now, if you look at air transport, what does air transport do in terms of trade? You can't transport fuel, you can't transport heavy machinery and all of that. All you can transport is high-value goods and high-value foodstuffs. And
Abhijit,
that's about it.
Sorry, Abhijit, sorry to interrupt you. Just one. The way I am looking at it, my prism could be narrow, okay? Let me just give you. See, what I was looking for is a man-to-man substitution of the existing boots on the ground of the United States by India. In other words, all these things are already in place. What they don't know is who they can trust to hand it over. This is the first of a kind. Always US, what did they do? They withdrew, but the tanks cannot be withdrawn, so they leave them there. The heavy machinery cannot be withdrawn, so they leave them there. So all that hard work, heavy lifting has already been done by the US through the Pakistan route. That's already done. It's already there. All the United States wanted was boots on the ground replacement. So sure, you may have 1.5 Indian soldiers for one American soldier because just think about it, just have a little bit more redundancy. I'm in that narrow perspective where America just wanted India to sort of, replace its boots with India's boots. Was that even considered? I mean, I can understand setting up the base now, that's very difficult. Yes, but just the replacement boots.
No, very, very dangerous thing because you don't know where the supply chain is going to come from. On one hand, Russia probably won't allow you to supply it. They cut off our base in Kyrgyzstan or Tajikistan, I forget, both Al Ain and Farukhor, simply because they didn't want us interfering in Afghanistan. That is their backyard. Iran again plays this game. So if you put Indian boots on the ground out there, first forget the question of boots on the ground is in your face in Afghanistan. So it will be seen as an Indian invasion or occupation. That's the last thing you want right now. Second, much more important is the supply question. How are we going to supply? If Russia doesn't want you playing there, Iran definitely doesn't want you playing out there. Pakistan won't let you supply them. How are you going to supply them? You're basically sending them in there into a death trap where they are going to become extremely unpopular if they do security properly. And second, you won't be able to supply them. So it was never an option. It was never going to be an option. And the air supply route anyway is prohibitively expensive, especially for a manpower intensive. If it was an air power intensive operation, you could even think about it kind of, but not entirely. Especially now that you have people like Zamir Kabulov, who is President Putin's point man on Afghanistan, saying that the solution to Kashmir, the solution to Afghanistan lies in Kashmir. This is not the kind of backup you need. Iran, again, given your history with Chabahar, this is not the backup you need. You can't do these things. They look very nice in terms of video games and things like that. In real life, it is impossible to do this.
Abhijit, I think I respectfully disagree on one thing. Any exercise of this magnitude, you are looking at it that India will have to spend the money. My point is, I don't believe that is true. This is a first of a kind engagement where India is essentially saying, yes, yeah, it might be looked at as an in your face, but really what choice do you have? India is being, surrounded by China, and now China has gotten in bed with Russia. And all these logistical expenses, all those things,
Look,
Uncle
Shri,
Sam
Shri, Shri,
would,
Shri, one
Uncle
second,
Sam
one second,
would
one
put it.
second. Shri, Shri, Shri. Shri,
Uncle
here's
Sam
the
would put
problem.
it.
Every Chinese prospect around us is a failing prospect. There is not one prospect that is economically productive. All right. I think at some point we need to understand that even our military doesn't, even the way they're going at the moment, your air force is severely depleted. Your army is severely overmanned. It's sucking up the capital budget. I doubt we even have the ability to defend India realistically and properly right now. Afghanistan to bahut dur ki baat hai. We should be very realistic. This delusion of being a superpower right now, we're not even a proper regional power at the moment. We really need to be realistic about what we can do. And, these dreams of grandeur are fine, but they're just dreams. If your air force is depleting at such a rapid rate, you can't do air projection. If your army is so low tech and so manpower intensive and so callous about human life, it's not even a question of payment. Because the problem is, once it's not America's problem anymore, the questions are going to get even more harsh about why are we subsidizing India to maintain a force there. If India maintains a force there, remember, the Taliban attacks are only going to grow because they're paid for by Pakistan. America is still a distant threat. India is an in-your-face threat. This isn't a very good strategy, especially not landing people in an island which you can't supply, where your supply chains aren't guaranteed. What are you going to do? Tomorrow, if Iran cuts off air supply, are you going to invade Iran? Are you going to bomb Russia? How fine, you're going to bomb. How are you going to get things into Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan? The problem is, if you look at the northern route on the map from Kashmir, people just, they just draw lines on the map. The the Illusion 76, for example, you do not want it. Even today, when you fly to Beijing, if you look at the map, the direct route is you take off from Delhi, you go over the Himalayas, over Tibet, and then through to Beijing. Planes don't take that route. Very high performance modern twin jets like the 777 and the A330 never take that route. What they do is they go down south, they trail the Himalayas through UP into Bengal, all of that. It's only when the Himalayas start descending into Myanmar, becoming much shallower into the Arakans, that you then cross over and then go north to Beijing again. So again, the supply route from Delhi moving north, prohibitively expensive. It can't be done, full stop. There is no if or but to this. It just can't be done. There is no cost equation that works out in our favor here.
Well, I think we'll have to leave it at a disagreement in principle, because I'm privy to some information that I can't share here, that US was willing to go the extra yard or extra mile to try and
they'll be willing to go the extra mile for now. The question is, how long does it last? It's like the South Vietnamese government. They support South Vietnam for 4-5 years, and then it will collapse. And then what will you do? They just wash their hands of things.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And we certainly can't be a mercenary fighting somebody else's war, because remember, the whole thing here is we seem to think that Afghans aren't capable of fighting their own war. For a long time after the Soviet withdrawal, it was till the Soviet Union collapsed, Afghanistan held out by itself. It didn't need foreign troops. They defeated a full-on Pakistani invasion in Jalalabad simply by themselves. All you realistically need to do is give up this ridiculous idea of imposing Western norms on Afghanistan. Give it to some guy like Abdul Rashid Dostum. He'll hold it together for you. You just need to keep paying him. You don't need to do anything. He hates Pakistan. He'll do it for you. And he understands the local norms. He understands the fighting there is brutal and nasty, and he'll do it. Why do you want Indians killed? There are heaps of people there who hate Pakistan, who can keep it outside Pakistan's strategic influence. We don't need to do all that. All we need is money, and we need to find some kind of a drip, sop, mix and match supply route every now and then to support the Afghans. That's it.
Well, here is the reigning wisdom, and you can correct me, but the US cooperation deal included India being able to do a lot of manufacturing of Lockheed aircraft and a whole bunch of other things that the US wanted to do in India. And in exchange for that, they wanted Indian help in Afghanistan. I don't know all the line items, but I do know for a fact that, so with India saying no to helping in Afghanistan, and also India going ahead with the S-400 deal, we now are at a point where US is saying, So India is back where it was. It hasn't really moved much, and they're probably going to let us, do whatever you want. And in the meantime, your foreign exchange is going to be depleted more faster because oil is going to be volatile. You saw the sinking of two ships in the Hormuz straits by Iran, and Iran is going to lash out. It's got no choice. I mean, that is a debate for a different time. My point in all these things is India isn't exactly a bed of roses as far as Modi is concerned. I mean, I have had a very extensive budget analysis dissection, if you will. The India needs 20 lakh crores every year to get to the $5 trillion economy, to do all the infrastructure dreams that Modi has. He just doesn't have it. Okay, let's again leave that thing aside. So India needs serious cash infusion because India tends to write down the magnitude of its NPA crisis. The people are implicitly trusting Indian government with their money in the bank, their savings. That is in a lot of danger. In fact, I would like the Indian government to come out with how much pieces of paper, which is worthless stock, that State Bank of India, LIC, every other public organization that actually has the people's money that is profitable is holding, because thanks to a certain individual who shall go unnamed here, you know who I'm talking about, who used to make a call to the LIC chairman and say, go buy this worthless piece of shit. Sorry to use my friend, pardon my French, because there was a participatory note counterparty transaction waiting to happen. But be that as it may. So what are India's options then? How is India going to find its way out of this mess?
There isn't any way out of this mess. It's sometimes, you just have to accept that as the answer, because the Indian economy is in serious doldrums now, right? You had the bankruptcy law brought in. Not one single company has been declared bankrupt under it. We all know there's a severe NPA problem. Nobody wants to talk about it. Everybody's just going on this dream of a $5 trillion economy, which I can honestly tell you isn't going to happen in my lifetime, leave alone in the next 5 years. Where? You're talking about Lockheed Martin setting up manufacturing here in the S-400. First of all, Lockheed Martin didn't even own the entire F-16 to give us 100% production. All of the newspaper articles you saw were at best paid propaganda. All right. Lockheed probably owns less than 25 to 30% of the F-16. It's the world's first truly globalized fighter. About almost 40% of that will be owned by foreign companies, right? So first of all, Lockheed didn't have the IPR to transfer it to us in the first place, certainly not at that level, right? So that promise was complete hogwash. Second, linking it up to Afghanistan was never on the cards, because the way government works is you don't link geopolitics to something else. Defense deals are linked to defense offsets. Foreign policy concessions are linked to foreign policy concessions. And the attempt of every government is always to break the linkage when anyone makes it. The one place where we haven't been able to break the linkage is with Russia, and that's a much more complex reason, because Russia is basically a deindustrialized society that produces rubbish weapons. Now let's look at the S-400. The point with the S-400 is you've seen what's happened in the Turkey case, right?
Yes.
They bought the S-400 and now they've been kicked out of the F-35 program. They're not going to get the F-35. And Rocket Sun, which produces one of the missiles for the F-35, has also been kicked out of the program. They've lost almost $9 billion worth of business overnight because they wanted the S-400, a missile that adds really nothing to their operational capacity. Now, we have bought the S-400, and not only have we lost the ability to buy any further American stuff, we've also now created a lot of concern amongst all European aircraft suppliers saying, hey, wait, if we supply our aircraft, our classified technology to you, if it starts interacting with the S-400, there are a lot of secrets that can be pried out from it. So, this, I don't understand the rationale behind the deal, but then, it's very clumsy. But it's classic of the kind of policy making we're kind of seeing from this government. They look at the first order effects. They're completely ignorant of the second and third order effects, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Well, certainly viewers, this has turned out to be a very fascinating discussion about India's options, America's, and along the way others. And I would urge you to watch this thing. I mean, I guess now, if you are listening to me say this, you are already watching it. But it's fascinating, Abhijit, because I'd like to come back and discuss more about some of these things. But today we are running out of time. Our viewers tend to log off around 20-minute mark, and we are close to that. And I'm very candid about this. I realize everybody's time is precious. Do subscribe to PGurus channel. And Abhijit, thank you very much for joining this discussion. We'll be back with more such intriguing discussions where you're not always going to have one point of view. There will be violent disagreements, verbally, of course. And but at the end of the day, there is a lot of food for thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You know how the saying goes, it is through disagreement that the truth emerges. So
Yes,
let's
yes,
see.
yes. Thank you very much, Abhijit.
Thank you.